Chapter 7 The Blythe Girls, Helen, Margie, and Rose by Laura Lee Hope. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 7 An Unexpected Luxury. The night brought showers and relief from the intense heat. In the morning, the girls were in better spirits than they had been the night before, and even the prospect of temporary separation from Margie seemed not nearly so tragic in the broad light of day. Margie rose early, filled with the importance of her new position and determined to be on time for this first morning at least. The eccentric Miss Pepper had said 8 o'clock, and 8 o'clock it would be. Helen fairly forced her to eat a good breakfast of bacon and eggs and coffee, for excitement had robbed the girl of her ordinarily healthy appetite. "I'll leave you $20 of what Miss Pepper gave me yesterday, Helen," she said to the older girl, gulping down her coffee, "and I will try to save enough out of my salary to pay the rent. And in the next week or two Rose is almost sure to get some sort of position, even if it only pays a small salary. And I think I may be able to sell some of my sketches, if I touch them up a bit," responded Helen cheerfully. "I hate to take so much of your money, Margie, when you need new clothes so badly." For a moment Margie's face clouded, but she banished the expression immediately and gave Helen her gayest smile. "I won't need much," she fibbed bravely, "and I would be pretty ungrateful if I weren't thankful that I'm able to help out any way I can now." At that moment came a shout from the youngest, and Rose charged in upon them, her eyes bright with excitement. "Who do you suppose just stopped before our door?" "What?" they asked in unison. "A limousine! A perfect peach!" Rose was fairly beside herself with excitement. "I bet it's for you, Marge. My goodness, just think of the style of us!" "Oh, it can't be for me," Margie protested, half frightened at the suggestion of such magnificence. "Miss Pepper said nothing about sending for me." But at that moment the buzzer in the kitchen rang with peculiar urgency, and Rose ran to answer it. Margie went excitedly to open the front door and saw, ascending the steps toward their apartment, two men. The first she recognized as Miss Pepper's butler, that haughty possessor of the three chins. The second was a man in a chauffeur's livery. There could no longer be any possibility that it was a mistake. These men had come for her and her luggage to bear her like a princess in the fairy tale to the prince's ball. That the prince's ball in this instance resolved itself into the unromantic position of social secretary to a crabbed and exacting old woman did not in any way detract from Margie's delight in the experience. The trunk had been borne downstairs by the grunting and disgruntled Oliver, whose dignity had been sorely impaired by this menial task, and the man in the chauffeur's livery. Margie stopped behind for a moment to embrace her sisters tearfully and whisper that she would see them again just as soon as she was at liberty. Then she hurried down the stairs, obsessed by the fear of being late and thus offending her exacting new employer. Helen's last admonitions and Rose's excited comments and congratulations floated after her as she walked with a sense of unreality down the remaining flight of stairs. She ran across the flooded sidewalk, not bothering to open her umbrella, and, still with that sense of unreality, entered the limousine whose door the chauffeur held open for her. She gave the latter a swift glance and saw that he was a presentable young fellow, a few years older than herself, with sandy hair, blue eyes, and a flashing smile. There was unfeigned, though respectful, admiration in his eyes as they rested upon her, and Margie wondered if she really was as pretty as he seemed to think her. It was characteristic of Margie that she had never thought much about her personal attractiveness. Rose's beauty had always been her ideal of loveliness, and she knew that she was not at all like Rose. What she did not know was that, although of an utterly different type from her younger sister, she was in her own way very attractive and pretty. Where Rose's skin was soft and creamy, hers was of an olive tint, but the rich color that came and went beneath it, the dusky softness of her eyes, and the masses of lustrous dark hair, made a picture that many a passerby turned to look at twice. On this particular morning she was even prettier than usual, for her color was high and her eyes sparkled with the excitement of her first adventure. She had become a wage earner. She was on the road to independence. The thought in itself was inspiring. And then, this wonderful car in which she traveled as though accustomed to such luxurious means of travel. Ruefully she looked down at her shabby suit. Somehow it did not seem to fit into the picture. Helen had been right. She needed new clothes dreadfully. Oh, well, later perhaps. They had reached Riverside Drive, were drawing up before the imposing residence whose awesome interior she had timidly invaded the previous afternoon. Seen from this new vantage point, it seemed not nearly so terrifying. The chauffeur opened the door and Margie stepped out upon the pavement. Her heart was beating rather wildly, and she had an absurd impulse to dodge around the corner and seek the security of home and Helen's presence again. She was suddenly and terribly afraid of the erratic Miss Pepper. Then she was in the presence of no less a personage than the lady herself. The latter regarded her with that same frowning, suspicious stare with which she had favored her upon their first meeting, and once more Margie felt as though she would like to sink through the floor, shabby blue suit and all. Miss Pepper jerked a silken cord at her elbow, and the next moment a becapped and aproned maid appeared. She glanced at her mistress inquiringly, then looked at Margie standing as though rooted in the middle of the floor. "Show Miss Blythe her room, Jane. Blue room," she muttered, and without another glance in Margie's direction, turned back to the litter of papers on the table before her. The disapproving maid favored Margie with another insolent glance, turned and stalked out of the room. Margie followed, supposing that was the proper thing to do, but her blood was beginning to boil. Never of a very gentle temper, the insolent manner of this girl fanned her anger to a blaze. Perhaps it was the best thing that could have happened to her under the circumstances, for in the heat of her anger she forgot to be self-conscious or ill at ease. Having ascended the stairs, the maid languidly flung open a door at the far end of the softly carpeted hall. "Here's your room, miss," she said with a barely perceptible pause before the miss. "I'll unpack your things if you like." "Oh, no, I'll attend to my own things," Margie told her coldly. "You may go now." She hoped that was the right way to speak to a maid. Up to that time she had had very little practice. Margie was relieved to see that the insolent maid was impressed by her manner. She withdrew, closing the door softly behind her, leaving Margie to look about at the new, altogether unexpected luxury of her new quarters. The decorations and draperies of the room were in blue, and Margie had always loved blue. The furniture was an ivory white, and there was a blue shaded lamp upon one shelf of the long mirrored dressing table. There was a door at the farther end of the room, and after she had taken off her coat and hat and carefully put them away in the closet, she went over and tried the handle of this door. It turned easily. The door swung open and revealed a tiled bathroom, complete to the closeted shower in one corner of it. "I think I will pinch myself just to see if this is really me," said Margie, forgetting grammar and everything else in the surprise and pleasure of the moment. "Imagine Margie Blythe out of a job yesterday and owning a bathroom like this all to herself the next. Good gracious, I wish the girls could see it. Wait till I tell Rose, won't her eyes stick out?" After a few moments more of reveling in the cozy luxury of her new surroundings, Margie set herself hastily to the task of unpacking her few belongings. She feared the sharp eyes and sarcastic tongue of Miss Pepper's maid more than she cared to admit, and was not anxious that the latter should inspect her modest wardrobe while she was on duty. As Miss Pepper had deigned to give her no orders, she had not the slightest idea when her duties would begin. When her unpacking was done, and still no word had come from below stairs, Margie sat down in the luxuriously padded and upholstered window seat to await developments. The view from the window was superb, commanding as it did a view of the drive and the river beyond it, but one could not remain satisfied with even so lovely a picture for an unlimited time, especially when one was as nervous and as on edge as Margie Blythe was at that moment. She asked herself why she should be nervous, but she did not have long to search for the answer. She was desperately afraid that she might not be able to please Miss Pepper, and she was realizing for the first time how very anxious she was to succeed in this, her first position. At this moment the obnoxious maid, without knocking, poked her head in the doorway to say indifferently, "Miss Pepper would like to see you right away in the library." End of chapter 7.